So, without further ado, if ever there was a moment to rethink everything you've ever known, I guess it's now, which feels a little scary. And the buzzwords are everywhere. We all know, right? AI, Gen AI, personalized learning, immersive experiences. And in this new era of technology, the world's never known so much change, I think it's safe to say. And what does that really mean for you and your institutions? Or another way to think about it is what's the greatest challenge for you and your institutions right here, right now, at this point in time? And I would say that it's the greatest danger or challenge is just standing still and doing what you've always done. And so we wanted to kind of share a little bit about, innovation and moving forward, right? And different ways of thinking.
Yeah, so really what we hope that you get out of this session today is that you can go away with some ideas based on some success stories of innovation, success stories of change management, and take these learnings and apply them to your own settings and your circle of influence as well as leaders in the sector. And to kind of get us started, I want you to close your eyes for a second. You can trust me, we're not going to do anything crazy. Close your eyes for a second. And take yourself back, if you remember, if you're lucky enough to remember, 1998. What were you doing in 1998? You don't have to shout out the answer. Okay, open your eyes. And if you don't remember 1998, you've made me feel really old. So this might look familiar. This was 1998. Anyone know what this is? There's a few smirks in the room. This is Windows 98. It kind of says what it does what it says on the tin. This was officially launched then, obviously, but also, so were iMacs. In addition to that, I did some research. The films Armageddon, Saving Private Ryan, and A Bug's Life were also released in that year as well. 3 films I didn't think would be released in that same year, but there you go. And 1998 was also the year that you would find me in my best friend's bedroom on a Saturday after going to town and buying the latest single on CD, and dialing up to the internet and looking for the song lyrics that we could then print out and sing along to. Yes. Anyone else do that? Just me. Okay. I actually still have one of them, which is the Alicia Keys single, Falling, and the lyrics that we printed out, I still have that at home. But sometimes that could take up to an hour, maybe longer, after you dialed up, got onto the internet. This is only 26 years ago, so think about where we've come in that time. And
Kiri's now going to perform. Google for Education, ladies and gentlemen. 1998 was also the year that these two bright sparks, Larry Page and Sergey Brin, founded Google. Thank you, because I have a job. And it was 2 years after launching a research project while they were at Stanford University. It was a PhD research project. And this photo was taken of them in our first ever Google office in Palo Alto. I don't think that Google office still stands. I'm pretty sure it was just a backyard garage. And some things like our homepage haven't changed much since Google started, but some are really different. So going from that garage to the first office campus in Mountain View, California, you may have heard of, and it's pretty spread out. Google's use bikes to get around. We don't do that in the UK. That's an American thing. And Google now has offices in over 70 offices in over 50 countries. So there's a few, right? And why are we telling you all of this? Why are we talking about the growth of Google? And we would argue that it's really a culture of innovation at Google that's been the leading factor, for all of the success that we've seen so far. So being born out of a university is something that's really stuck with us at Google. As I mentioned, right, Larry and Sergey doing that research project. It's in our roots, and learning's our roots. You can see in our mission statement as well, to organize the world's information and make it universally accessible and useful. Something that is as true as it was back in '98. So learning it's not just lip service, it really is at the heart of everything we do at Google. So has anyone ever used a Google search or YouTube to teach themselves something? I'm guessing you have. I'll go out on a limb and say I'll give you an example. When I was writing this, I was thinking, what could I share? I once researched a tutorial to clean a washing machine. Not the greatest example, but clean washing machine. Kiri's got one.
Oh, right, thanks for handing that over. Well, the thing that I'm actually searching for the most at the minute is how to make recipes that can disguise vegetables in it, because I've got a toddler. But I haven't actually found one that can disguise broccoli very well, because she picks it out. But yeah, I'm still learning, and I think that's the point, right? The tools that you might find in Google, the Google Stack, are things that can help you learn. Okay.
Absolutely. And so that mission, going back to the missions, led us creating products that are loved by people all over the world. Hopefully you love some of them as well. We've got 9 products that have over 1 billion users. And something you might not know that you might find interesting and I suppose quite relevant in your day-to-day and in your institutions is that we have over 3 billion workspace users globally, which is interesting, right? Because we know that there are other platform productivity suites out there that are being used regularly and have been used, which makes sense, but we're seeing the change now. So 3 billion users is nothing to sniff at. And a lot of those users are out there. A lot of the users of Workspace, for example, I think it's 95% of Fortune 500 startup companies are using Workspace. So we have a lot of usage out there, and it's interesting to see that accelerated growth. And I'll just use one quick example. We had, I think it was 80 to 90 million Workspace for Education users before COVID. Then after COVID, it was something like 170 million. So just shows and that will be the true of, right, a lot of other companies out there, but it's interesting how much we've seen the digital growth.
Yeah, and the pandemic has really accelerated that growth of our tools, and we've obviously seen that, and I'm sure that you've seen usage of technology tools in your organisations grow as well, as people have become more comfortable with them during the pandemic. And in addition to that, part of my role, I work with Wales and Northern Ireland on their deployment of Workspace across their countries, and I also supported Scotland for a while too. And they actually have national platforms where they run both Microsoft and Google together in kind of single sign-on environment. So it's really, we've seen huge amounts of growth just in those tools, and that's remained consistent after the pandemic. So those students going through these school systems are using these tools day in, day out, and they're having access to choice. And I think that's the one thing, if you're going to take anything from today, when you're thinking about the students and the customers that you're trying to attract, they actually have choice in their school system. And that's what they expect when they then get to higher education and into the workplace.
Yeah, so what can we really learn, I suppose, from a culture of innovation?
Yeah, so the reason that we've shared that is essentially in 26 years, which really is no time at all. We all remember that time. It's not really a lifetime ago. It is for 26-year-olds, I suppose, but hey-ho. But ultimately, in that short space of time, we've been able to grow and develop as a company. And part of that is built on these foundations of these 9 core principles of innovation that we essentially ensure that kind of runs through our veins at Google. And we're going to share some examples with you, and hopefully you can take some of this away with you today and apply some of these learnings into your own situations. So they fall into these 3 buckets. It might look like we only want to talk about the first one, but actually the other ones feed into the culture of innovation that we're going to talk about as well. So I'm going to start with culture of innovation. And has anyone heard of 10x thinking? I've got one nod. And it's Simon, so he doesn't count because we know him. Okay, so what I want you to do for a second is to have a think that I've just given you a task to create a new personal computer that you need to release out onto the market in 18 months' time. But what I want you to do is to think, what is your USP going to be for that device? What are the things that are going to make it stand out to the personal computers that are already out there right now? And when I say personal computers, I just mean a new laptop or a new desktop device or even a tablet if you want to as well. So for 2 minutes, I want you with the person next to you to discuss what would be your USP for a new personal device. Off you go. Do we need coffee? Okay. Anyone want to share their USP? And it's okay, it can be ridiculous, yeah.
So I would like a personal advice to this minority style user interface, so you don't have to touch it.
Yes. I think that's my dream as well. Only after watching Minority Report, which I don't think came out in 1998, but maybe close, yeah.
So we like a laptop that has a battery life of a week.
Okay.
I'm also going to put solar panels on it. And it's going to be nice and light and thin. It's not going to have like a car battery. But solar panels, so it just charges itself. And so when we're here, it's going to be charging off the lights. And then we're going to plug it in.
I love that. Right, I don't think my exercise is going to work now because you'll see why. Because they were actually really great ideas. Now what I want you to do for the next minute is to 10x that idea. So you've come up with actually what I would say are pretty good out-of-the-box thinking ideas, but what I want you to do is think 10 times better. How can you make that USP 10 times better? I'm going to give you 1 more minute, off you go.
And don't just say you want to make 10 of them.
Yeah. Okay. Anyone want to share their 10x ideas? Anyone want to share? What's your 10x ideas? Go on, yeah.
Well, so we've decided that we're going to remove the keyboard and that everything's going to be voice dictated.
Yes.
But it also has to be super sustainable and user repairable.
Amazing. Love it.
That sounds
Okay.
like a Chrome.
My idea is that these
You just designed a Chromebook.
Yeah.
Well done.
You've stolen my thunder. Okay, so that type of method is what we actually are encouraged to do at Google. So we might be in an environment where we're problem solving on a particular solution, and very frequently, and I'm sure Simon can attest to this as well, your manager will come to you and say, how are we going to 10x it? How are we going to think 10 times better? And this is so that we're not making 10% incremental changes on a solution. We're actually thinking outside the box. And actually, what you may have found when you then went to 10x an idea is that you came up with something even bigger and better. So that is very much encouraged at Google, and that's something that we practice. We practice what we preach. We do it a lot. And as Simon said, and stole my thunder a little bit, the problem that I gave to you just now was actually a problem that was given to some people in our engineering teams. And using that process and trying to essentially come up with something brand new, scrapping the blueprints of what a personal device looks like and starting from scratch, meant that they created the Chrome operating system. So for those of you that don't know, you are actually going to be using them during the session today, so hopefully you'll get a hands-on experience if you've actually never seen a Chromebook. But essentially, it's a cloud-based operating system, completely cloud-based. And Because of that and the way that we've built it, it's built with security first. So that means you don't need any antivirus. The total cost of ownership is much more efficient than devices you may have in your organisations already. And essentially, when we think about how people are accessing technology now, it's mainly in the cloud. And so these devices really serve a good purpose, and that's why we're the #1 selling device in education globally. So a really good example of how we've used 10x Thinking to actually transform personal computing. So the next principle is about innovation and not instant perfection. And did anyone remember this? Okay, we're getting a few more nods this time. I'm glad that you remember, because I'm going to tell you a story. So this is Google Glass. No one's wearing a Google Glass, are they? No, clearly not, because it wasn't great. But my senior, I used to work in a college, and our CTO at the time was really invested in Google. And thanks to him, that's why I am where I am now. And he went and bought Google Glass when it first came out, and he was walking around the college with honestly, he looked ridiculous, walking around with these Google Glass on his face. And the concept was really good. I don't think the general public were quite ready for it, to be honest. But this is a really good example of how, at Google, we'll think about how we put out a product and then how we iterate on that product and get feedback from the user to then improve on that product. So Google Glass, it hasn't actually gone away. If you work in certain industries, in certain manufacturing industries, Google Glass might actually be the thing that you put on every day. It just wasn't fit for the consumer market that originally we launched into. So as I talked a little bit about this, but essentially this is how feedback works with tools that we release at Google. So you may have used a product in its infancy stages. I met someone the other day who told me that they used Gmail when it first launched. I'm sure Gmail looked very different then than it does now. But the way that we kind of go to market with our products is we go through this research initial development phase where we speak to customers, we speak to other teams at Google who have maybe solved similar solutions, and essentially we kind of do this ideation phase as teams. But then we very quickly go from this to this sort of prototyping phase and then to alpha. So what you might notice is when a product is first released, it's almost really basic and it's in its infancy phase. And that's because we're dedicated to getting feedback from the people that are actually going to use it. And a really good example of this is Google Classroom. So Google Classroom came out when I was teaching, and I used Blackboard at the time. I used to teach in FE. We used Blackboard as our kind of VLE. Honestly, students hated it. Google Classroom came along. We were already using Google Workspace. It tied everything together really nicely in a bundle. But honestly, it was really simple. You could set assignment, get work in, mark the work. It did what it needed to do for us. But because teachers have been using it for so long, the feedback that's come in from teachers is red. You may or may not know this, but the Google for Education team set the blueprint for the rest of the company on how we provide on how we use feedback to develop our products. So the education team was always really good at collating feedback from teachers, probably because they're really good at giving feedback, so that probably helped. And they essentially set the process in how feedback is used. And every single piece of feedback is read by a person. We know that person. We get a report of what's been asked for, and those features that have been requested the most are the things that we then build into the product. So we're building with the user in mind, and whilst a product might seem not great to start with, actually that's because we want you to tell us what you need from it, and we'll build for you. So Google Classroom is just a really good example of that, and obviously one that's quite crucial in the world of work that we work in. Over to you, Simon.
Thanks, Kiri. So yeah, the next principle is focus on the user. And I actually love this one. Our 3 core values, I'll share our 3 core values at Google with you, which are respect the user, respect the opportunity, and respect each other. And it's not by chance that respect the user is right up front. We talk about it internally as well. You know, when we're talking about maybe a challenging situation, looking at it from all the different angles, we think about how does this impact the user? What's the user experience here? And one thing I wanted to share, I've got two laptops going on. One thing I wanted to share is when we think about respecting the user is our commitment to interoperability and portability. So, and how this relates in your world as well, in higher education. Because when I think about respecting the user, it's not about, you won't hear us screaming from the rooftop saying, you should only use our tool and that's it. We have the best tools. We understand that there's an ecosystem of our users using various tools that make sense for different reasons. It's really about how do we help the user get the most out of the tools, and how do we make sure that the tools we bring to the table are playing nicely within that ecosystem. So interoperability is something we take very, very seriously, and you can see that, right, with some of the features mentioned here, some of the facts mentioned, like support for the wide range of file formats, or even our APIs allowing integration. But something that is baked in at the start, that thinking about how do we better design our tools so that they're not going to be blockers to our users, but they're actually going to be helpful within the ecosystem.
And one example we have of that is in, and this mainly happens in higher ed, not so much in school, because generally they do make transitions unless they're a really big organisation like a big trust, or in Wales, obviously, where we see this kind of coexistence. If you open up you can open up a Word document in Google Drive, and it will kind of stay native as a Word document, and you still have the great kind of features of the Google tools that you can apply to that document. So that's really good if you're running both platforms, but also if you're trying to transition from one to another, because it means people aren't there frantically converting documents to then make it, you know, work in the environment that you want. So we're really proud of our coexistence model, and we see it work really well. And we know, as Simon said, that it's not one or the other for us, and it's about providing that choice that we talked about earlier. So the next thing that we're going to look at, so we've kind of looked at the culture and innovation, we've ticked all those three off. We're now going to look at high performance ways of working, and these are related, and hopefully you'll see why as we go through. We have something at Google, we had something at Google called TGIF, not the restaurant chain. TGIF, thank God it's Friday, it does stand for the same thing, it basically is a moment every week where we would hear from senior leadership teams to share what's going on in the company. And this started with Larry and Sergey back in the day. They would get all of the team together, especially when we were all in one office. They would all come on a Friday from about 4 p.m. They would deliver a session similar to what we're doing today, sharing things that's happening. And this is really to just open up transparency, and so that everyone feels like owners. Everyone knows what's going on, and that hasn't changed. We still have this. However, during the pandemic, I don't know about you, but no staff come in on a Friday, so we changed it to Thursday. Hence why it's TGIT now. But also, you pointed out that it looks like TGIT, which isn't great.
No.
The other thing that this does, and now obviously we have so many offices in so many different places, it's quite hard to get everyone together physically in one place. So we'll often have a sort of virtual call that happens earlier on in the day or later on in the day. But on a Thursday at 4 o'clock, the restaurants at Google open, and honest to God, in our office, they unlock the padlock on the alcohol fridge, and you can go and help yourself to beer and wine, which is fantastic, and we love it. But the point of that is because it's creating a kind of community within the offices, so people can easily share with other teams that maybe they don't often get a chance to speak to.
This is all under NDA, isn't it?
Yeah. And so when we think about that culture at Google, we're really thinking about that in our products. So we know that we want to help our users essentially create that kind of sharing environment. One of the things that's coming this year is taking notes in Google Meet or transcriptions. And I was talking about earlier about the fact that we release a product and then it gets better over time. This has definitely gotten better over time. But this will kind of transcribe your notes for you. We're also going to introduce something where you can, if you've joined a meeting late, you can ask a question to it, and it will essentially tell you kind of summary of what's happened before you've even joined. So all of this stuff is coming. And the reason that I'm talking about this is because, okay, this is great and lovely, and maybe you're wowed by that, but ultimately, this is how we think about, this is what we're thinking about when we're developing products. It's not just about, oh, let's put a product out there and hope for the best. We're really carefully thinking about our culture of innovation. We use these tools internally, right? So they're built for Google as first, and then obviously other people benefit from that as well.
Yeah, and look, and ideas do come from everywhere. So we think about the physical spaces at Google as well, which are really important. So you come to I'm sure many of you have been to a Google office, and it's kind of self-evident. They're designed to be, I suppose, more friendly spaces, fun-friendly spaces that just kind of happen to feel just a little bit easier to share ideas. And I've worked in, I'm sure many of you had various jobs and careers. I definitely feel that and sense that. And I think there's also this rumor going around that no Googler should be 20 feet away from food at all times. It's pretty true, actually. It's pretty accurate. We have a dining room, but we also have these micro kitchens, which are real close to your desk. so you can get snacks at any point in time. But those micro kitchens are not just designed to kind of, hey, it's nice to have some snacks and have a break and get a coffee and get back to your desk quick smart. Pretty clever, but also great like theaters of having more engaging conversations just on the cuff, like just more organic kind of conversations. You run into other Googlers. Hey, there's that thing we were just talking about, you know, and I've seen that. I've been part of that as well. All of a sudden, an idea turns into a project, and that happens quite often. And it's very, very harmonious, except for when they bust out the peanut M&Ms, and then it's every person for themselves. There's no collaboration. Just grab the peanut M&Ms and run. And then I want to talk really, really quickly just about data, not opinions. This is so important. You know, relying on the data is critical to really understand what's going on across the human interactions and management practices and allow us to make just better choices, right? But it's so easy to fall into the trap of, oh yeah, but I have this perspective and I feel like I've been pretty thoughtful about it. But we all have those different perspectives and biases. And so it's really important to make decisions based on good data. And Google Geist is a really good example of this approach. So I'm looking at you, Kira, because we used to get one of these once a year. Now we get it every week.
Yeah.
So it's a survey that comes to our inbox. And we are expected to take part. And I've always taken part. Have you, Kira?
Yes, I have.
Okay.
Yeah.
And it goes out to all of the global employees. And then, you know, to find out what's working, what we can do better. And then I think the important part about that is, okay, well, what do we do with that information? Then we see that information reflected by senior leadership when we have these large meetings, and they'll talk about the results, and then they'll talk about, well, actually, we're seeing that this is an area where we think we should be, where you're thinking we should be doing better, and this is how we're going to approach that and think about that. Or now we're going to prioritize that because of what we've been seeing in the results.
Finally, the final bucket, talent acquisition and retention, my favourite one to talk about. So, you're brilliant, we're hiring. It's like a common phrase that I hear all the time at Google. And obviously it's kind of well known that they only hire the best people to work at Google. Isn't that right, Simon? Me and Simon were laughing earlier because if you've ever seen The Internship, Simon was saying he's like Vince Vaughn in The Internship, which was quite funny.
Has anyone seen The Internship?
Okay, go and watch it. That joke didn't land well.
That didn't land.
Basically, we hire for this culture of innovation as well. So it's actually in our hiring practices. There are actually, people may think that we do like brain teasers as part of the interview process. That doesn't happen anymore. That did used to happen, but we realised that wasn't really an effective way to understand if someone was capable of doing a job. But we actually have 4 interviews in our interview process, and they all have different categories. So we have kind of your RRK, which is your role and your roles and responsibilities of knowledge, basically. So do you actually know what you need to do in order to do this job? Have you got good work experience to do that? The second one is GCA, which is general cognitive ability. And this is more like, kind of goes back to that sort of brain teaser time, but actually it's more grounded in the role that you're going to be doing. So you might get asked a question that actually you have to give kind of like a thought process to as an answer, rather than just giving an answer. And we find those to be really telling when it, and actually they're quite difficult. And when, I mean, we've both done interviews. We've both had interviews and also done interviews, been on the other side of it. And that is a really kind of like telling moment when you can see how someone's thought process works. And that's something that we're really keen on, and understanding that people can see a bigger picture of things. And the one that I kind of want to focus on is we actually hire for googliness. That is one of the interview types, and it kind of fits within leadership as well. But essentially what we're looking for is all these things that we've talked about already. So we know that when we hire people, they already have instilled these qualities that we're looking at when we're thinking about the culture of innovation. And in addition to that, we really are passionate about investing and growing in the talent that we have, and allowing opportunities for Googlers essentially to grow within the roles or grow within the company. So one thing that we do, and something that maybe could be applied to your organisation, is we have something called Googler to Googler training sessions. So if you're a Googler and you have a particular really good experience, Simon can play guitar really well. He might do a session for our team on how to play guitar. Or someone might just be really good at project management. And so our managers encourage us to put on sessions for our teams or for anyone at Google who wants to take part on these particular sessions. And again, it kind of goes to this openness and sharing and collaboration that we pride ourselves on, and even when we're building our tools.
I'm open to bookings for weddings. So.
Actually, we do have a Google for Education band that if you come to an event you may see, and Simon is part of that.
I am. Sorry in advance. This slide, great teams can be measured. What's making an effective team? I find this slide interesting because if you just look at this, it really feels like quite a cliche slide, actually. How many slides have you seen like this? Psychological safety, dependability, structure and clarity, meaning, impact. It sounds great, but when you really think about that, and I really did have a good think about that, in the different teams that I've worked in, what are the ingredients that make a successful team? And that does feel about right. And what I found interesting was when you have any of those ingredients missing, psychological safety has got to be the biggest one. But when you have some of those things missing from a team, it's just not as effective. And I've experienced those teams. I've experienced teams when all of those things are working, and that's really it's really what we're focused on. How do we make that work properly? And then when you have a team has all those ingredients, and you feel confident, you feel comfortable, and you know what you're there to do, you feel comfortable about it. You also start having healthy conversations about, actually, could we not think about doing it like this? And that leads to going back to those 10x conversations. How do we get more out of what we're doing, right? How do we work more effectively? And finally, for me, like giving people license to pursue dreams. So following on from that, understanding that we have all these incredible, valuable people with different skills and different interests. So at Google, we have this program, 20% project. So if you have a really great idea, you can have a 20% project approved by management and your leadership to work on. And some incredible products have come out of those 20% projects. This isn't someone just saying, just go and create this product. This is someone saying, I actually think we can do this better. And then out of that program, out of allowing people the time and space to pursue their dreams we've had things like, Gmail being created, pretty big deal, right, out of a 20% project. So that kind of, I think that could be something that, you might find useful as well in your institution.
Giving people time and space, I
Right.
think, is the kind of the overarching thing from that. So again, I'm going to ask you to take 1 minute before we wrap up and think about all the things that you kind of digested. If there's anything there that you think, I'd actually want to go and implement that into my team, that's great. But here's us thinking 10x, thinking bigger. And I want you to think about something that you would work on if you knew ahead of time that you wouldn't fail. So I want you to just think for a minute. You can talk to the person next to you if you want to. Have a little think. Perfect timing. And my final note to you is, why don't you just start that today? Thank you very much. I'll hand over to Felix, who's going to come and talk about Vertex AI.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Have you got slides?
No,
Okay.
no slides. It's going to be a tough act to follow, let's be clear. Well, I'm going to tell you about cloud and AI. So my name is Felix. I'm looking after UK and Ireland for higher education at Google Cloud. And yeah, I'm going to tell you about what we do for institutions in the UK, Ireland, and how you can use those tools, including AI, to try to improve the student experience and the engagement. But yeah, I like that idea of what could you do if you had no potential for failures, and why don't you start tomorrow? A lot of discussion I had around AI lately. I heard a lot of discussion about, hey, that's new technology, and let's talk about how we can use it. But let's be clear, AI has been around for a long time. We've used AI in our products at Google for several years now, and institutions already around the world have included AI in the tools they offer to their students. In the US, we already have virtual tutors to help students better engage with their learning. So this is nothing new. So that's really something I want to convey. All the technology we have today is available. You can already start with the project. Feel free to come to us, have those conversations, come to us directly, come to our partners. Let's see how we can help you. Right. So at Google Cloud, there's, I would say, 3 main axes we work with on the project with our customers in higher education. The first is around central IT. So how to help on your digital transformation journey, how to help move all of your existing application and infrastructure to the cloud to make it more secure, faster, and cheaper to run. The second axis is around researchers. So a lot of research today is happening on cloud and leveraging AI and machine learning. And let's be clear, there's none of the revolution that you've seen lately around vaccine research or even AI would have happened without cloud. So it's really something that is changing the world of research. There's that has accelerated research like 10x. So that's really a big part of what we do for higher education. And the last part is around students, right? The learning experience and how to use AI and our cloud technology to better engage with students and offer them personalized learning experience. Some of the conversation I have right now with institutions in the UK are about, well, how can you help us track attendance for students to make sure that the students complete the course, actually pass the course and continue on to the next course. So if any of those metrics are things that are important to you, and I know that most of the institutions actually do follow those metrics, right? Even being able to improve them 2, 3, 4% is a big deal, right? So those are some of the use cases that we are discussing right now with institutions across the world, how we can use AI and cloud to offer solutions to better engage with students, make sure that they actually attend the course, continue on the course, and are successful in their learning. A lot of the conversation we had up to now were about just simple tools, right? Some institution came to me and said, hey, we want to be able to directly generate reports, right, instead of going to IT all the times. Mm-hmm. Well, that's good, right? We have tools for that, but can't we do something better? Like if you had to generate a report around attendance for your students, for instance, well, the report would be at the end of the semester and you already know, it's too late, right? If you want to do anything, you see, oh, this student hasn't attended, so it's failed, basically his module. Well, can't we do something better? Can't we use AI maybe to monitor attendance while the student is on following semester and maybe spotting some trends, right? Being able to see, hey, this student is on a course to maybe fail his module because he's not attending enough lessons. And being able to act on that insight using AI and cloud is really where the value is. So this is just one of the example of things we can do. There's many more. As I said before, even acquiring students, being able to match a student profile with the values and the culture at your institutions rather than only on academic grades, helping them engage with the learning and also helping them afterwards, find the best jobs that match with their skill set and their profile. So all those areas we can help using cloud and AI. So I won't go into the details now, but we happy to have conversations with any of you. So come to us, as I said, come to our partners on the GTech booth, and we are going to have those discussions, trying to find out what are the metrics that really matters to you, what are the KPIs that you want to impact, or what are the things that you really want to improve in your institutions, and we are going to discuss with you how to use our tools to help you achieve that. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. So Andy is now going to take us through a workshop, and we're going to get hands-on with the tools, some of the tools that we talked about earlier. So if you haven't got a Chromebook in front of you, if you can grab one, and I'll hand over.
Cheers, Kiri. Yeah, there's loads of devices around the room. Grab one if you can see one. Feel free to play around with it as we go through this session. My name's Andy. I work within one of Google's partners as a non-profit, and I train people to use Google Workspace. Let's just jump in. If the device is locked, if the Chromebook you get is locked, the password on these devices is go Google One, or lowercase go Google One. If you haven't used a Chromebook before, and I'm saying this nervously because I don't know, these aren't Flip. I was going to say they flip. If you're really careful when you demo a Flip, so some Chromebooks flip 360, turn themselves in tablet mode. This one doesn't. Don't be on that one. Some of the other ones are doing right. So we've got some Chromebooks around the room. As Kiri said earlier, Chromebooks are very popular in education. There's 1 million Chromebooks out in the UK education space. In the university sector, quite often seen as a testing device, quite often using something called kiosk mode, which is where we lock them down and we use them for one piece of software. So think about going to an exam hall, being given a device, running your exam on it, and frequently see Chromebooks in that space up at university sector, and then the borrowing devices, the sort of the library devices, things people are borrowing for short loan times. That's really popular in terms of where the Chromebook sort of sits. Okay, what we're going to do today is have a sort of a little play. I'm going to take you through a couple of the Google tools and also into the admin console. The accounts I've given you riskily also have admin access. But I'm going to just take you into a couple of things to show you some things. On the device, I'm on a Chromebook here, you'll have the sort of the bar at the bottom and you'll have the Chrome icon, which you're probably familiar with. So open up a new window if you want and just type in the window docs, docs.new, docs.new, and it will make a blank Google Doc. And in fact, that shortcut works on loads of things. Slides.new makes the new slide, and Sheets.new makes the new sheet, and even outside the Google world. Some of the Microsoft tools have .news as well in their world. But Docs.new, we're going to make a nice new blank Google Doc for you just to have a little play on. We've probably all seen, I'm not in this session going to go through like, oh, this is bold and this is italic. I bet we all know that stuff.
Now, can we go
So, you want me to go to the top line menu? But what I'm going to do is pick up some of the differences and some of the features and some of the bits that might not be as obvious in the feature set. So, what? Don't have access to Google Docs?
They're all locked out of the store. Interesting.
Well, this is a useful use case scenario to show the admin console, isn't it? So each feature in Google can be turned on and off individually. So if you think about your organisation, there might be some features you choose to use, and there might be some features you choose not to use when you are using a particular tool. So you can choose to turn things on. Some people might have Gmail turned on, Gmail turned off, Docs turned on, Docs turned off, and so on. So what I'm doing here is I'm jumping across, because someone said to me I don't have Google Docs, jumping across into our admin console. And this is really interesting actually, because I don't know whether we're in demo GFE, why would we not have Docs.new on?
I don't know, it's really bizarre.
Yeah. I'll have a play.
It's all part of the demo.
Yeah. Well, no, because it's really interesting. So what I have on my account is I'm thinking, do I have permission to turn it on? I'll have a look in a second. I'll demo something on screen and I'll come back and have a look in a second as to why that's up. Do you want to ping, Kiri, do you want to ping Peter?
Yeah.
And ask him if Docs is turned on. So, coming back to Docs, I'll just do a demo on my screen while Kiri pings Peter. Let's just talk about this. So, we're in Docs. Standard word processor type stuff, but one of the key things about Google and Google Workspace is this concept of linking things together. Often we look at products in isolation. We think about our docs, then we think about our spreadsheets, then we think about our slides, and other tools, think of separately. But in Google, everything sort of interlinks. So let's imagine I'm in Google Docs and I'm going to have a meeting. So I'm going to press my @ symbol on my keyboard. It brings up my little menu. And I'm going to just scroll down to Meeting Notes, which is one of my what we call building blocks in Google Docs. As soon as I go to Meeting Notes, Google looks at the fact that it knows I've got a calendar. It knows I've got things going on. So it goes over to my calendar and it pulls from my calendar what's going on. I'm going to click in this workshop here. And as soon as I click in the workshop, it pulls in the details of the workshop, who's been invited, all that information, because it knows that in my calendar. And this is interlinking of tools in the background. So I just went out, Meeting Notes, pull that detail in. And then I'm obviously imagine I'm in a meeting and I can take notes. And often if you're in a meeting, you'll get given things to do. I'm going to give myself a task, turn on Google Docs, because that's something that someone hasn't done. So I'm going to do that in there. And when I put an action item in, you can see I get a little sort of symbol next to it, and I can assign this to someone. So even though I'm in Google Docs, what I'm doing here is I'm in the meeting and I'm writing things in, is I'm integrating with Google Tasks, our task-based system, my sort of job-based thing. I'm going to assign it to myself for now, and press Assign as a task. And now that's been assigned to me in Google Tasks. So I'm using Google Docs in this sense as a meeting note tool, but I'm interlinking with all these other products at the same time in the background in a fairly smart way, using this @ symbol, and that's what we call smart chips. When we talk about smart chips in Google Docs, that's what we mean by this. We create these sort of interactive areas. And even up here, if we hover over me, look, there's my details as a smart chip, here's the details of the calendar thing as a smart chip, here's today's date as a smart chip. They're all in there as sort of interactive elements. And so I got that, and even though that's gone over to tasks, that means now in my Google Tasks, and this is where all my tasks come up, but somewhere in there will be Turn on Google Docs in my tasks area on the right hand side. Lots of things for me to do here. And if I mark it off here in Google Tasks and I tick it, so it's done, it automatically gets striked off in the meeting agenda. So someone who's got access to the meeting agenda can say, oh, Andy's done that thing he was going to do because he ticked it off, but I might have ticked it off in tasks. And it's this sort of joined up piece that people often miss because they look at our products sort of section by section and they look at docs, compare it to Word and so on, they forget this sort of interactivity. And then we have like to do two additional what I like to call power-ups in our system. So here's Google Docs, and it's nice, it does all the things it does. But sometimes you're looking for it to do something more, a little bit different, where you've got a real use case for it. So we have up in our extensions area, we have something called add-ons in Google Docs. Add-ons is a way of giving additional functionality to Docs. Maybe there's something you want to do in Google Docs that isn't in the core product, and somebody else has probably already had that idea. And so there is this sort of big sort of space where there's a huge sort of list of add-ons, or in this case a big white screen. But there's a huge list of add-ons of things I might want to do. I might want to be doing particular mail merges. I might want to be doing stuff with AI in there. I might have particular other tools I want to tie my doc into, so I can sort of tie it into Salesforce if I'm using that, or Zendesk if I'm using that, and interlink it with other third-party tools. And that can come on through add-ons. But we also, that's like Power Up Level 1, but we also have like Power Up Level 2, I sometimes like to call it, and this is where I get very geeky, because it's one of my favourite spaces, is something called AppScript. Which means, imagine I go through all the add-ons and I go, you know what, there isn't a thing I need to do. I need Google Docs to talk to my very bespoke LMS system that I'm the only person in the world that is using. If I can't get any other way of doing it, I can go in and use AppScript. And AppScript allows me to build my own script onto the product, to build functionality into Google Docs, Sheets, Slides, whatever I'm building into, to link to whatever I want to link it to myself. And yes, that requires more technical skill, right? We're at the pushing it end of the operation, aren't we? We want to build something that doesn't exist, but that's still possible. And that means that one of the things I really like about Google and working with the Google tools is the answer is never no. The answer is never, well, the product can't do that. The answer might be, well, Google haven't built it yet. Is there an add-on? Is there an add-on? No, there isn't an add-on. Okay, now I'm going to build it myself in AppScript. So it's one of those sort of three choices. And sometimes I do end up in that. I've built stuff myself where I've gone, oh, it'd be really cool if you did this. And recently I built something to link, this is very much based at identifying student criteria in work, and be able to identify where criteria is covered in, and imagine how you'd identify it in a doc, but then how we can interlink that with a database in a Google Sheet to show, okay, let's see if the student across a number of different documents has covered all these criteria. Because often in education we sort of criteria-based assessing work up. There are lots of different ways of using that, but that's sort of just a really sort of quick sort of into Google Docs piece. A couple of other things to mention. So the only button that's big in Google, all the buttons are sort of white and pretty boring in Google. There's not great design on the buttons. But the only button that's really big, in this case blue, is my share button. And that's because one of the most important things across Google Workspace is share. Is this idea that we're going to collaborate, we're going to have multiple people working on a doc, a sheet or a slide at any one time. And so share is really important. And the share also means that often in a Google environment, we end up weirdly with less files, because often I want to say in my historic world, in my Microsoft space, you'd make a copy of something and then another copy, and there'd be version 5 and version 7 and version 20. All these version history things are. In Google, there's often just one version. We just iterate it, we change it, we grow it, we move it forward. So we use the share button, we share it with people, probably all seen that before, and then we move it forward. And that's why the other important button here is my favourite, is version history. File version history, see version history. And in this space here, we can see what's happened in this doc. Very little has happened in this doc. It's a bit of a boring doc, not much history going on there. But let's imagine me and Kiri are working on a document, and I've got the most amazing document, and then Kiri ruins it because she goes and puts some funny pictures in there or something of her song lyrics from 1996, whatever it is. I might sort of don't like what you've done there, so I can go back in time to what it used to look like. In this case, it was blank earlier on. And I can either just restore the old version, take it back to what it was, or if me and Kiri are in some sort of debate, she keeps changing it and I keep changing it, I can ultimately pull a copy of an old version. So, very, very briefly, Google Docs. Let's just cover while I'm doing a bit of product, while I'm in the tools. I just want to call out a couple of the others. So let's just look at slides firstly. And I'm going to do the same shortcut again, just do a slide. I've already got slides open, I'll just get
Can I just say, Andy,
cool.
obviously, like with Google Workspace, it's Google Workspace in the cloud. Like that is everything is like
Yeah.
you know, the source of truth is everything that's in the cloud. There's no offline version, although you can use the tools offline, and you can also download documents as different file types, which we talked about earlier with the interoperability. If you wanted to download your document as a Word document because you needed it in that format for whatever reason, you can do that. But there's no, well then when it comes to your users, you haven't got that kind of security risk that users have got sensitive information, say on their laptop, because they're downloading documents or using their local hosted version of a productivity suite. Actually, everything is saved in the cloud, so actually you have additional security because of that as well.
Thanks. And to pick up on that, every file's got a file make available offline. If you're really nervous, like I'm going to do a presentation, I'm coming in here today, I'm thinking, will the Wi-Fi hold out? Will it go down? I'll tell you what, I'll make it offline just to be on the safe side. Or if I'm traveling, I use make offline. You can also in Google Drive make a big chunk of your drive offline. So if you travel a lot, want to access loads of files, make your Google Drive available offline. Okay, so back into just in slides. The slides is our PowerPoint equivalent tool, very similar in terms of format and setting. I'm going to call out just a couple of features that I'm seeing get a lot of popularity in our space at the moment, just because they're newer and also because they're relevant. The first one up here on top right-hand side of the slides is something called Slides Record. Slides Record, and if I recording your video, it allows me just to record a live video. So there I am in the corner, down there, and I can just present my slides, and it just records a little recording of my slides over the top as a video. We've seen the usage on this increase massively recently, and particularly in our education space. And part of that is actually a response to AI. Because as people become more and more concerned, did a student write this? Did they actually generate this themselves? Is it their own work? One nice solution is to say, well, could you also present it back to me? Even if I've somehow AI generated my content somewhere else in my slides, the fact that I'm sitting there talking through it, presenting it back to someone, means I've actually got to learn it, and I've got to understand it to be able to iterate it and explain it back to someone. And so what seems like quite a small feature there in Slides Record is sort of really picking up in that space in terms of people wanting to use Slides Record in that way to find out if there's some original work, to find out if there's certain things people are doing. So other than that, Slides is our generic presentation tool, but it's also a graphic design tool, and people often miss this about Slides. Sometimes people who are coming from Microsoft say to me, oh, where's the publisher? What's your version of publisher? Like you got Slides and Docs and they all cross over, what's publisher? So Slides can be any size, and one of the things about Slides is we can layer images on text, on video, move things forward and back, be a bit more graphical. So often when we're working in a more graphical space, we could have made the slide A4, A3, A0 size, and then done our work on it in that space. So we often see Slides being used both as the presentation tool that it is, and also being moved towards that piece. Now across our various tools, we're starting to see AI integrate into the tools. We have different AI features in different tools. Inside Slides, you might have heard of Gemini, and one of the things that Google's been talking about a lot recently is moving into the Gemini area and sort of rebranding all its AI as Gemini. And that's the name for our large language model that underpins AI. Here in Slides, one of the things it can be used to do is generate imagery. If I'm creating some slides, I want to create some images to go with it. It makes logical sense, so that's a good point. This is the point I might want to put it in. And this is actually where, when we talk a little bit about AI into product, where we're starting to see AI move towards. Originally, when AI first launched, it was very much AI sort of over here. So I'll go over to the Gemini website and I'll get my AI and I'll come back over here in Slides. Or I'll go over to ChatGPT and I'll get some text and I'll come back in. But in reality, in the long term of AI, it doesn't make sense to be bouncing around different products, does it? The long-term solution across everything is probably going to be that AI will be embedded at this sort of level. When we come to need to, when I come to want to insert an image, that's when I want to have a prompt for AI image creation. So it's more likely we're going to see AI moving to products. And in the Google space, that's known as Gemini inside Workspace. And that's what we're seeing a bit there as Gemini inside Workspace. So we've seen Slides briefly, we've seen Docs briefly. I just want to go over to Sheets. In fact, what I'm going to do here is I'm going to change accounts so I can show you this in a slightly different way. Google Sheets is our version of Excel, and actually it's one of the products that is the most sort of similar in that obviously it will natively, we talked about this earlier, will natively open an Excel sheet. It will then, you can work on the Excel sheet, you can use macros and formulas and all the stuff you might want to use, and then you can go back and keep it as Excel. So it's the product that I think is the closest fit between the two. Do a lot of data analysis in my work in Sheets. I just wanted to show this bit. There's a bit more AI going on here. It's Gemini over the right-hand side again here. And I've got a big spreadsheet here. And by the way, this is a big spreadsheet. I'll say how big is this spreadsheet. It's this student data for higher education. It's, what's that, 49,000 rows long. So it's a big data set I've got. And because I've loaded it up, and because we've got Gemini running on the right-hand side here, Gemini is analysing what's over there while I'm loading the sheet in. Some of you might be, I'm quite a bit of a data geek. I love my spreadsheets and I love my formulas. But some of my colleagues are not as excited as me by the concept of 49,000 lines of data. And therefore, you know, this idea that we can summarise, okay, this is what this data is showing in a summary sense. And then down here what it's doing is it's predicting, looking at the data, what formulas and things might I need. So do I need to, in this case, create a formula that finds the number of first-year undergraduate students in England in 2014, 2015? Do I want to be able to extract pieces of data from that? And what it's doing now is it's running through the 49,000 lines of data to work out where that is. And in a minute, hopefully, if it's feeling lucky, it will come up with a formula. But it's allowing me, I'll come up with the formula now. So it's a SUMIF formula. A nice, for the sheet geeks in the room, a nice SUMIF with some embedded searches in there for me. And I can insert that in. I'll put that in somewhere. Let's insert that in. Yep, overwrite data and pop it in somewhere. So I can insert in the sheet. So this idea that the AI is there sort of helping us is really useful. Because, yes, some of us have those skills. Some of you in the room will be excited to know that formula. And some of you at this point will think he's talking gobbledygook. I could never write a formula like that. And that's where the AI sort of comes in and helps us in that way in this sort of stuff. One word of warning about Google Sheets and Microsoft. Google Sheets can take more cells than Microsoft Excel. If you go more than 1 million rows down, by the way, I made this terrible error. I went more than 1 million down, and then you can't go back to Excel with more than 1 million down in a column. Just watch yourself on that one. That sounds like a big number, doesn't it? But once you start doing student data at scale, you can imagine how even for you guys, some of your institutions, a series of results for a number of students, you could get a data set bigger than that. So, here we are. We've just looked really very briefly there through docs, sheets and slides. Before I'm going to jump across to Admin Console in a second, but before I jump across, any questions about just sort of core products, any of those pieces? Yeah. How did I get that result? Because it's actually multiply counting some of the totals in there. So we need to go back through and evaluate the formula better. Because what it's doing there is the data's actually got students by age, and so it's multiply counting people at some of the totals in some of the total columns. I need to tidy that formula. And that's why we need a skill set on top of AI, don't we? And that's why we should trust AI. Other questions?
I found out why you haven't got access to Docs.
Have you?
Yes, because if you give them the demo admin account, they don't have access, which
Seems odd.
yes.
Just because I wanted to give them admin powers. Admin people not allowed documents all of a sudden in some strange world. Okay, so, but have they got sheets and slides then, have they? They just haven't got
But
docs?
they haven't got anything.
Oh, interesting.
Admin access.
Yeah, just,
Great,
okay.
Look at the admin console.
Yeah, okay, because, oh, you like me, don't you dare look at the product. Okay, well, there we are, we learn something new every day. So that was so entirely my fault, and I will apologise now, because I gave you access to our admin console. If you want to, then, on your device, you can open up a new tab with the button at the bottom. This one you can play in. So you can open up a tab with the button at the bottom. And when the Windows opens, goes to admin.google.com.
They could ask you for a password, so you'll need to give them a password.
Go Google One is the password. It's all in lowercase. Go Google One if you get a password on the admin console.
Anthony, are you going to show that?
Yep. I'm going to show assignments in here.
Sorry.
Don't worry. So here we are inside the admin console, and actually, hands up in the room. Who's ever been in it before? Got 2 people at the back. I know I checked you guys earlier. A couple of people came around here. So our admin console is where we control what's turned on and off for our users, and where we deploy our policies. And a lot of the console, I would say 90% of the console, I often describe as set and forget. Which means you come in here, you make a decision, you go, this is what we want. Do we want to use that tool? Yeah, we'll turn on docs, because that would be useful, wouldn't it? Yeah. So we'll turn on docs, and then we do that, and then we just sort of forget about it. So a lot of the console is sort of that piece where you sort of go through on a verse, make some decisions. But just bear in mind that it can be customized in a variety of different ways. And we often talk about customizing it for different user types. So you might have a situation where you're going to have some students using particular tools, other students over here using a different tool. It's entirely your choice how you set up and decide what users can use. We mentioned earlier of there's all these sort of core products inside Google Workspace, and we've seen a few of them there as I went through the demo, and you might be thinking about using some of these at a high level. But beyond this, there's what we call additional services, and that's all these things. There's a ton of stuff in there, which is all what we call our additional services that you may or may not be using. Some of those in the areas that you're working in might be particularly relevant. Looker Studio is our data analyzing tool. We can point Looker Studio at big data sets, we can point it at BigQuery, we can point it at SQL databases on the web, and we can visualize reports for people. Really popular in the sort of sector we work in. I'm a former geographer and a GIS specialist, so I'm a big fan of Google Earth, and also a version of Google Earth called Google Earth Studio, which if you've ever watched the TV news, creates the fly-through animations, when they sort of zoom in on a place from the world and all that sort of stuff. So it's a product called Google Earth Studio, really nice tool within the bounds of Google Earth. So lots of different tools, and again, in the admin console, we've got this control to dig in and turn them all on, turn them all off. But what I want to focus on a bit today is to talk a little bit around, and my console will be slightly different to yours potentially, but talk a little bit around security.
But that's only because of access. That's not because the console is different. It's just
No.
because they've got different levels of access.
Yeah, because even though we've given you admin console access, we didn't give you everything. Just to stop you from wiping out our total domain, we gave a little bit of level of security in there to stop you from just being able to do anything whatsoever. So I'm going to just flip consoles here a minute to give myself a nice big console to have a look at. So, when your mind goes, what is my password? And I remembered it. It is. When you go to the admin console, you always get password come up, even if you sign in on a Chromebook. And that's deliberate because the admin console's got more power. It's got an additional level of security. Also, even when I'm doing a demo, in the middle of this demo, it might just log me out again randomly and make me put password in, particularly if I press too many buttons. Right, I'm in the admin console, and I want to just talk a little bit through some of the security that exists across Google Workspace. Kiri mentioned earlier, we mentioned before, that when we're using Google, everything is in the cloud. So everything we're doing lives in the cloud, and that means we can sort of decide how secure we want things to be. And that could be really secure, we could really lock things down, or we could be really open and sort of or it could be a variety of between the two for different people in different things. I want to go into the security investigation tool. So I got in my side menu, I went to security, and I went to the security investigation tool. And security investigation tool is this ability for us to search for things, and then potentially, I'll talk about creating rules later, but create rules around what we might want with our data. But let's just start by looking at searches. So searches, I can search anything that's going on across my Google Workspace. And I'm going to, just as an example here, this is a fake admin console. So it's not real. So I'm not looking at anyone's real data here, but I'm going to look at email messages as an example. And I'm going to add a condition. And I'm going to add a from sender. And I'm going to have it as me. I'm going to search for I know it sounds a bit weird, but I'm going to search for my own emails. Just go for that one and search. So I can search for, in the system, I can search for anything I want to. As an admin, as a super admin on this account, as access to all the systems I can search. It could be in Drive, it could be in Docs, it could be in Sheets, it could be anywhere. Because maybe you get someone come to you and say, oh, I've had a dubious email sent to me, and I want to know about it, I want to find out who they sent this to. I can do this search in the console, as you can see a couple of emails I've randomly sent. And I can click on those emails, and it will give me all the details about the email over here, who it was sent, when it was sent, what time it was sent, all that sort of stuff. If I go and try and read the email by going to message, you'll notice it goes, hang on. Now, this is getting a bit deep. This is going, oh, hang on, what do you want to go into nosing people's emails for? Like, that's a bit more of a step. You need to have a reason why you're doing this. You are a super admin, you might have a really good reason, but you need to tell us the reason. I'll just put test for now, but I would have to put a reason in. Now, if I do that, well, it let me in see the message. So it's not just a pure, and the message just was test apparently, but it's not just a pure into things. But this idea of being able to search and to go into the data allows me then to take action on things across my console. And that means I can do things at the bottom here like delete that email, restore it, mark it as spam, do other things with it over here, send it to an inbox, move it around. So if we get incoming things, we can start to deal with it. However, in Google Workspace, we've also got AI scanning all of the emails coming into our system. Has anyone, by the way, hands up in here if you use Google Workspace, sorry, use Gmail, even personally, or you've seen Gmail. Okay, lots of people have seen Gmail. Hands up if you've seen in Gmail a big yellow or red bar at the top where it's saying, warning, this email's a bit weird. Just curious. It must be used, yeah. And so, you're just getting dodgy emails. So, when an email comes in that's suspicious, Gmail will do one of two things. Sometimes it will think it's so suspicious, it will straight quarantine it, which means it won't let it through. Second option is it will flag it with a bar at the top saying, be careful with this email. And the common one is somebody with a name. So let's imagine an email from Andrew Caffrey goes to Kiri, but it's not my normal email address. That's suspicious, isn't it? Andy's suddenly on a different email address. It's the right name, but a different email address. And that's how a lot of phishing attacks work. It will flag to Kiri, this isn't Andrew's normal email address. Be very careful about this. So behind the scenes, we're using actually AI to scan the emails to check it. So actually, you're probably not going to need to do a ton of manual security investigation because we'll have probably pulled it before that point. But we still have the option to go in and see what's going on. Accounts like finance at, accounts at, are permanently always getting phished. And my big advice when I'm working with people is, even if you don't use Google for lots of your accounts, put your accounts at, put your finance at on a Gmail, so that it's just getting filtered all the time. Because there's sort of fake invoice sending, people trying to pull them. We've all seen stories in the press about that sort of stuff. And we know that Gmail has got that built-in cloud security around that piece. So, security investigation tool, slightly linked in with sort of a little bit of Gmail there. Now let's talk about one product in particular in the app. So we talked about earlier on, you can turn things on and off in apps. So I'm in the left-hand side menu, I'm going to apps. By the way, for those of you who do use them, because lots of people had hands up earlier, recently this magic little pin has appeared when we're hovering around the left-hand side menu, and it allows me now to customize the left-hand side menu. So if you spend your whole life going to password reset, because some people do, you can now pin sort of stuff on the menu. But I'm going to go into Google Workspace, I'm going to talk about the apps, and you'll see in here, I've got an app, two apps actually, one called Assignments and one called Classroom. And in fact, I'm going to jump over to my slides to just explain a little bit about the difference between these two apps when I find my Assignments and Classroom slide. So Kiri mentioned earlier a product we have in the education space called Google Classroom. And Google Classroom is a sort of fully out there LMS that is used to send work out, get work back, do all those sort of common movement of work in an education setting. Loads of people using Google Classroom. But frequently, people have got their own stuff they're already using. They're on Moodle, they're on Blackboard, they're on Canvas, they're on a custom in-house thing that somebody built 25 years ago that they call a special name. Whatever it might be, people often use their own. So we built what is almost like a sort of a second version of Classroom called Assignments. An assignment allows you to take our features from Classroom and plug it into what you're currently using. So it's LTI compliant. For anyone who's in this space probably knows what that means, but it's LTI compliant, which means it's sort of a thing about like a bit of a, when you embed something, think about like embedding some like Google Classroom Power into the product you're already using. And the reason why it gets traction, particularly in the further and higher education space, is because of one particular feature that people love. And I'm going to show you the feature inside Classroom, but just bear in mind this could be embedded anywhere else. So you could be embedding this into your system. And it's a feature called Originality Reports. So, classwork, create assignment. And then when I'm creating a piece of work, in this case, and you can imagine in assignments the flow would be the same. You create an assignment, you're giving it a title, you're giving some task for some students to do. I'm going to ask them to write something. That's very vague, but let's go with it. And I can attach something from Google Drive if I want to. So I'm going to just attach a Google Drive doc. For now, I'm going to attach that nice blank thing I made earlier. And I'm going to make a copy for each student. That's, by the way, one of the most popular buttons in the whole of Google Workspace. For some reason, is make a copy for each student. It will multiply that document for each person in your class, in your LMS, if it's plugged into assignments, and wherever it is in the group that it's been put into. So I've done all that. And then I can assign points to something else. But it's this button down here that is a reason why a lot of people use assignments and do that. And as you can see, what it says is it says check plagiarism originality. We're going to scan that piece of work against two things. The first thing is the web. So we're going to scan the incoming piece of work against the web. and see if they've copied the website. Now, when the student hands their work in, they can run the scan themselves. This isn't about us going, oh, we've caught you out, you're 97% Wikipedia, right? And it's about the student running the scan themselves and going, hang on, what I've written here is practically 97% Wikipedia, I need to do some serious editing to this thing. So students can run it before they submit, or when it submits, it runs as well. It runs automatically when it submits. So scans against the web, one thing, also scans against a repository. And you can define that repository yourself. So some people put all previous submissions for that particular assignment in the repository so that, you know, older year groups can't share with younger year groups or whatever it might be, or someone who did that module last semester and now he's doing it now, can't be, you know, reusing stuff. So we're just checking against other things. So we can scan against those two things and we can then find out and report when the assignments come in, when they all come flowing back through the system in whatever you're using. You could be using Moodle or whatever. We're going to report to say to you, this is, you know, this is being copied from this piece of work in this repository at this point. So we're able to do that. I often at this point get asked an AI question. People are okay, does it detect AI? And the answer is no, at the moment, nothing. No one out there has properly got a grip on detecting AI. When it comes to detecting AI, I often ask people to go back to some of the things I've mentioned earlier. My favourite friend in detecting AI, I'm on there. My favourite friend in detecting AI is actually things like, I'm trying to find a doc that's not got confidential. Look at my windows, they're all confidential. My favourite thing in detecting AI is version history. If you sat and written a piece of work, that version history will be going word by word by word by word by word. In 1 second, the document went from there to 17 pages long. I'm suspicious. My radar is going, this is suspicious. I now want to ask you some questions. I want you to record a video. I want you to explain that to me. So I've still got that tool when it comes to that area. So we mentioned Classroom, we mentioned assignments, we mentioned Admin Console. A couple of last bits in Admin Console while we're in there I want to just show you. Let me get my right console up. A couple of other things. Let's do in security. Just want to mention them, and actually it's now in report. It's now in rules on its own. I forgot where I moved it. Rules. We can build auto-generated rules in our admin consoles. I mentioned this to the guys at the back earlier on. And a rule can be implied automatically. Think about it as a security rule. I'm not going to go through the example now in detail, but the example I often use is a rule that we can put in to look for certain patterns in data. Student URN numbers, passport numbers, credit card numbers. Let's imagine I want to make a rule so that if a credit card number comes in a spreadsheet, it can never be downloaded, printed, externally shared, used overseas, you know, logged in overseas and viewed overseas. I can build rules in my console that scan 24/7 all of my data all of the time to make my console more secure. And I do. I genuinely, where I work, we use Google Workspace, we scan 24/7 against all these things, and it's part of how are we ensuring data security. We also build, where I work, we build rules around location, so we don't allow our devices to be used in all the parts of the world where we don't operate as a business. And then what we all do is we forget, we go on holiday there, we get there and we get really annoyed because we can't log into the system. But we know that's why, because the rule exists. So you can build these rules within the system, and those rules can apply to the data. And they apply to all data. If I, on my own system, take a photograph of a passport and I put it in Google Drive, the OCR reader in Google Drive will flag the passport number and it will lock the image into my drive. Won't let me share it, because we've got a passport rule. So, brief mention of rules there, as I'm just flunking through and watching, conscious of almost finishing on time. Last little piece, storage. Get lots of questions about storage. This console's got very little on it because it's a play space. There's 21.29 gigs. Most of us would love for that. That'd be our total storage. But the way it works in Google is that you can totally choose how you deal with sort of storage. Any sort of standard account gets the 100 terabytes on a standard education account, but lots of people get more. And they get more because their user numbers are higher. So if you've got loads of users, you obviously get more. Or they might get more because they're on different levels of Google Workspace. We have different editions. That gives you more. And if you still run out, you can just go out and buy another whatever. You know, I need another 10 terabytes. You can just buy on top if you need even more. The important things to note is that no maximum sizes in here. So I know sometimes when I look at some of the other people in this space, there's a maximum file size. Well, there is technically a very large maximum file size, but there's no user size. So if I wanted to, I could give 100 terabytes to one person. I mean, it's a bit of an unfair distribution of all my resources. but I could if I wanted to. That's my choice to do it that way. So I've got, and what's showing me on this page is what users are using the most and what shared drives are using the most. But I can have different storage for different people. My media team probably need a massive amount of storage for all the videos that they're chunking out. But maybe my students are going to have less. Maybe my certain department are going to have a bit less because they don't maybe use this or they're not as active. So I can totally choose and set different limits for different people to keep within storage rules if I want to. So that's the storage areas. I'm conscious we said we'd finish around shortly, didn't we? So I'm conscious of the question time. Any questions across Admin Console and Google Workspace? Go for it.
Just a question around the IDM side of things. Where do you put the users
In terms of how to pull users into console. Most people, you've got two different options. You can do a sync with another tool. So Azure Sync to get users in from Active Directory is quite a common one. So you can build a pure sync that creates the same users across the two systems. Some people use third-party tools if they've got other databases, so they use a third-party tool to auto-profile all users. Most people, I would say, in the volume space that you guys are operating in, are going to use a tool in that space to create. But yeah, can be from either. Or you can do it if you really want to. You can manually upload CSV, but I don't suppose that's what most of us in the room are going to operate on. But there is the option just to manually put a user in that way as well. And for talking of sign-on, for SSO, we take single sign-on from other organisations as well. So if you're in an environment maybe that's still that you're heavily using Office 365 Microsoft, you could use that as a sign-on. Still need to create the users in our system though, because when they come in, they've got to have access to the system, so they've all be created in the system. You could use them. And the same with the Chromebooks. We can create a Chromebook with a 365 sign-on. So through the Admin Console, we can create a managed Chromebook that's signed on through Office 365. Goes into 365 and then displays Teams and whatever else you want to use in that space. Yeah.
Create trust between multiple organisations who might both be using different tenancies.
You can indeed. So we call it white labeling domains across two domains. So you can create two domains. So what you do is you add a trusted domain in the system. And a trusted domain, it means it behaves like those people are in your organisation. So if you say no one can share externally, but you've trusted this university or this college over here, you can share with them because it behaves like they're internal.
Can you do it in an application though?
In terms of, well, Drive is considered one application, if that makes sense. So all your files will probably be in Drive. So the sort of answer is yes, but what we're trying to do, like, give me the use case of it.
Sharing between two businesses that will effectively two tenancies can share, like in Azure, you can do an application that would rather just open up everything.
Yeah, you wouldn't. You would open up the ability to share, but it doesn't mean they've got access to anything at that point. So they haven't got access to your drives or anything just because you've done the share. By putting the domains together, what you're doing is allowing the system to consider them an internal party. And then as you build the rules in your system, so if I've got a rule that says no external sharing of passports, that's going to auto clock in when I do that auto scan, because they will be seen as inside the system, they could still open the file. But that doesn't mean they've got access to the file, because I've got to actually physically create the drive or give them access to the folder or just in that space. So it doesn't, when you turn them on, it doesn't give them initially anything until someone starts giving them access to things. Usually what you do is create a shared drive between the two organisations, and then that's known to be a shared space where you collaborate. And we see that sometimes in higher and further urban research projects, and we've actually got some Google tenancies that are multiply owned by multiple universities, that they're doing a research project that's multiply funded. You guys probably know more about how that works than me, but it's multiply funded by different people, so rather than having it in one organisation, it's hosted in like a shared Google shared drive that's owned collectively by all the partners involved in that project to create that in that shared space.
Yeah, just another common scenario is when you have a shared document and you're the owner of it, and then somebody leaves an institution.
Yeah.
You've got access.
So when you put something in a shared drive, ownership is owned by the drive. So anything in a shared drive, it's not owned by an individual. When the process of putting it in there or creating it in there means it's owned by whatever these things are called here, the drive. Okay, so if you put it in a shared drive, it's not. If it's owned by a user, it's in their personal drive. It is genuinely theirs, they own it. One of the options that you can do, and you can do this automatically and at scale when you're doing it bulk, because you guys are probably not removing users manually, is you can basically change ownership when you remove a user. So you'd flip ownership, usually to a central account, like an archive account or something, and that reduces the risk of somebody who's got a really important document who's left. No one realises they were the original owner, and we're going to lose that document. You know, so normally what you do is you transfer ownership on documents.
And what we're seeing from a sort of best practice wise is that an account might be suspended for say 12 months or whatever your policy is, and then you can use something called drive labels, and you can set that up in the admin console. So that document could then be labelled to say this document is owned by
an archive user.
Like an archive thing. If you need access, contact ITM.
Yeah.
You know that. So there are different ways to manage that. A lot of it is around process and policy, if I'm honest. But essentially, you can manage it however you want to.
Yeah, so given Ben's like at the moment, you're looking at like role-based accounts as well that people have ownership in terms of rights and permission to sit there dormant and know in time get there and
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm seeing a lot more people sort of do smart integrations with whatever their staff directory stroke MIS stroke Azure, whatever they call it, their source of truth is. And we're seeing a lot more, talking about like that sort of API and automation of that space now. Because doing that makes you more secure if it's automated, because then if someone leaves, the system just kicks in and it does whatever you taught it to do. Any other? Yeah, go for it.
Do you have tools for an easy mass migration from another supplier?
Yes.
Yes. There's actually tools in the system called, I don't know if I've got them on this account, but they're called Google Migrates. There are tools to do migrations,
And GTEC can also support.
and then there is, yeah.
We'll have a chat about that.
And,
Migration is quite common.
Yeah.
So,
I think it's a tool set that USISA should be interested in making available.
okay.
That's a good point.
It's a good point.
there's also the other one which sometimes sees, it sounds weird, but Google to Google, just moving when you merge, mergers and acquisitions in your sector, and somebody moving into one domain, bringing it into one tenancy. See that quite a bit as well. Again, relatively simple to do.
One thing you haven't talked about is Chrome management for exams.
Yes, I didn't, and thank you for pointing me out.
So one thing that we're now starting, well, in the US, in order to be quite transparent, as we talked about transparency already, one of the reasons that we are the #1 selling device is because Chrome operating system works so well for exams. And in countries where you see digitisation of exams, you basically see Chromebooks. And so students generally will have access to a Chromebook during their education, mainly because they've got digitised exams and that's how they're then completing their exams. And we're starting to see this trend happen in higher education as well. Oxford University completely roll out their whole exams, their digitised exams on Chromebooks. And that's because of the simple ease of use of being able to manage them. So Darren from Oxford is going to be talking at our event in April. So if you are coming to that, which I'll send out an invite for as a follow-up today, you can hear more about it. But I'll also link in the case study that they've done with us around it. But Anthony, sorry, I should say.
That's fine, no, because I only went to the page that does it, is all I did on the screen. So, I mean, the admin console, I went to devices, and I went to device settings, and this is where you have your options to control Chromebooks. And we can control a Chromebook from the moment it powers up. So the moment it powers on, we could have it go straight into some exam software if we wanted to, without even a username. We can control it from power on moment, which is called device settings, put it in a kiosk mode, or just customise it. I won't scroll down this page. There's over 500 different settings on this page. There's a huge list of settings, because you can imagine how different people want to customise devices in different ways. So usually on this page the answer is there. But yeah, the common one is the boot up in kiosk mode is a common one. The other thing that we see a lot of is when they're university or college owned devices, removing some of the commercial features, removing things like guest mode, so that it can only be signed in by certain accounts, or maybe only signed in by a university account. These are common sort of controls. But again, all customisable on that page.
Sorry, Andy, I think
Yeah.
Yeah, I had just one final piece of work, I don't know if it's for both
Yeah.
yourself or not. So one of the other challenges that sort of prevents considering going across is usually engineer skill sets on the Google platform as well. What do you guys do to try and upskill?
We've got really good certifications actually for around the ITF admin side, also the educator side as well, and then just user, your kind of business admin stuff. But on what I would say is that if you're quite a technical person who's used to managing a complex environment, adding Google to that is not very complicated. Like I can use the admin console and I have no technical experience whatsoever. However, I think the main thing is about best practices and actually what's possible with admin console, what you can do, and that's the thing that I think the certification allows you to understand a bit better.
We also do the IT admin summit, don't we? So once a year we get people into Google in London, like the sort of key sort of network lead type people, and basically go through a lot of best practice with them, and obviously get them all in a room together, because what we find is they've all got similar challenges. They'll all be sitting there going, "How do you migrate users?" So we do that.
What's the date for our one?
In June.
I want to say it's June the 10th, but that might be wrong. But it's in June this year.
Also, there's kind of self-guided stuff on
Yeah.
there as well, certifications.
And the Chrome OS administrator certification.
Yeah, I can send that.
And as a partner, we can deliver paid for in-person training or
Yeah.
remote training. You know, it depends on how you want your users to upskill. There's various methods to do that.
We can follow up with some of those resources, self-guided resources.
Yeah.
It's great.
Any other questions? This is your one shot to get stuff in. Kiri, do you want to close?
Thank you so much for coming along and for sticking with us. That was quite a long session. Hopefully you've left full of ideas, and if you're obviously, we're going to be here for the next 2 days if you want to grab time with us. We've got an event coming up in April, which is a 2-day event in our London office, and we're paying for hotels. So if your organisations will allow you to kind of come out to that, we're more than happy to have you there, and I'll send out the invitation to that as a follow-up from today. But please feel free to grab us. We'll be on the GTech stand, which is at the back of the exhibition hall. And yeah, we can grab coffee, we can have a chat about your kind of unique circumstances that you and challenges that you're finding, and how you think Google might be able to help solve some of your challenges. And also, if you want to come down and just bring your teams and have a kind of day at the Google office, and we can go through a lot of this stuff in a lot more detail, and kind of personalise that one-to-one experience, we can do that as well. So thank you so much for coming.